get started. The first point on our agenda of this general meeting is the Lifetime Achievement Award, and that will be presented by Phil Hubbard.
Hello. So, last year at this time, I was surprised and delighted by being the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, and that apparently came along with it the duty of following up and handling the next year's award. So that's what I'm doing. Because in the past 2 times this has been given, besides me, Claire Braden Siskin got it in 2017 at the Berkeley Conference. The award has always been a surprise. It is not going to be a surprise this year. But because it was a surprise last year and I didn't really have an opportunity to say much of anything about my lifetime, I'm going to do that this morning before introducing Mr. So I was born in Peoria, Illinois, sometime in the middle of the last century. A nice family. I had, no, okay. Looking back at my life in Call, there are a few things that have been important lessons for me that I would like to share with you. The first one, I think, very relevant to this conference, but also to a lot of other conferences, is understanding that the research we do is really valuable. It has strengths, and if people either ignore it or simply don't know it exists, that's to the detriment of our field and their students. So I think we should all try and be a little better at letting people know we exist and why we're important. But also, along with all the strengths, there are great limitations to our research. Some of the types of research we do is very important for a particular time. And 5 years later or 10 years later, it really isn't that relevant. We don't need to know what the attitudes of middle schoolers are from 2005 about their use of technology before smartphones were ubiquitous, because those attitudes change. At the same time, there are a lot of really valuable research results which have helped us come up with principles and ideas that underlie our field, even though the technology has changed dramatically. Some of the early work on computer-mediated communication, which was done on intranets with people sometimes in the same room, just with their backs toward each other, told us a lot about how people interact when they're in that kind of setting. And so if you're doing research, you need to be careful about just automatically citing things from 10 or 20 years ago that may not really have relevant results, especially if you're relying on those. But at the same time, you don't want to ignore a lot of the really good stuff from the past. So the more you know, the better. A second thing that I've picked up is an understanding that the things we do, both here at this conference and what we publish in journals, represent a continuum of how intense the technology component is. And I think we seem to treat it sometimes as if it's the same. Sometimes if it's a very familiar piece of technology with the people who are working with it, and there's some little tweak we're adding, that's very different to when we're working on something entirely new. And so being aware of that continuum, and that sometimes this also fits into what Stephen Bax referred to as normalization. Sometimes that technology is already so embedded in our lives and the lives of our students that we just think of it as part of it. And other times, it's something very new, and all of that still needs to be studied. Even things that become normalized still need to be looked at, because we use them in new, innovative ways. In the 1970s, we did a lot of work on helping people read more effectively, even though they've been reading for centuries. So we can keep working on that, but be aware of that technology intensity when you're doing your work, and especially when you're interpreting other people's work. Besides looking back, looking ahead. These are three really easy points to make, and other people have made them. But last time I checked, I'm not dead yet, so my lifetime in call is not over. And I see fundamentally a lot of what we need to be doing on a broad scale is preparing teachers for a world of constant change. Preparing learners for a world of constant change. Not just training them or having them work with things that are current, but understanding how to have a mindset to get into new things, because we know those new things keep coming, and if anything, the pace of those new things showing up continues to accelerate. And then finally, preparing researchers for a world of constant change. I was trained in theoretical linguistics. The research methodology I used was to ask, well, basically to look at some data, come up with hypotheses about how, in my case, Albanian worked as a language, and then make up sentences in Albanian and ask Albanian native speakers if these were real sentences or not, and if so, what did they mean? Most linguists don't do that kind of research anymore. They got corpus stuff. And certainly nothing I've done since then has been like that. So you have to relearn, and it took me a long time to relearn or to learn new ways of doing methodology. The third point I want to make has to do with something that's popped up a lot, this idea of the call community. And the social call doesn't just mean social in the sense of how we apply call to situations where students are trying to learn. It also means we're social with each other. We are a community. Over the years, we've become a community, I think, that to me carries a lot more, I have a lot more fondness for it than I do most other communities I belong to. And part of that, I think, is because we're always, at least those of us at the core, are always sort of the odd ducks where we are. We find much more affinity, as people often do when they go on the internet. We find more affinity with people who are distant from us, where we come together here, and sometimes online as well. But we find that affinity rather than at home. So, do you think of yourself as a core member of the call community? If somebody says, what's your field? Do you say some variant of computer-assisted language learning? If so, that's the core. But it's a broad community. We have suburbs. We have lots of people who, including I think many of you, who define yourself more centrally as something else, but you still are very attached to this. I think of it as maybe, I just started learning to play string bass at my age. Luckily, there aren't people around most of the time when I'm practicing. But it's, I'm becoming a part of the music community, particularly the bluegrass music community. And there are people at the core of there. I'm never going to be at the core. I'm in the suburbs, sort of, very far out. But I appreciate and I learn from those people that are at the core and other suburbians. So I think that's something else, that this idea of community, it's spread out, it's very diverse, and that's good. And then I don't hear the bass in that really. And the last group of the community is the visitors. We have people who are just getting started, don't know if they're going to settle down even in the suburbs. We have people who are come in and work with us because they have some particular problem they want to solve or some particular context in which they want to embed technology to help support language learning. And that's great too. Again, my feeling is, the more the merrier. And if they decide they really like us and want to stay, that's even better. So we welcome all. Now, having said that, our Lifetime Achievement Award winner for this year is Vance Stevens. Vance isn't with us today.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Here I am. I'm over here.
He's
in the back door.
virtually there. Okay, so Vance, darn that technology.
Oh, well.
We have been around.
So Vance, this is especially appropriate toward my last point because Vance is at the forefront of welcoming the visitors to our field and has been for many decades, many decades. So I first met Vance in 1984 at TESOL conference in San Antonio. He was in the process of helping co-found the TESOL Computer Assisted Language Learning Intersection. I was giving a talk on understanding English modals through space grammar. I very quickly became attached. I had started doing computer stuff a little bit earlier. I very quickly became attached to this new called interest group. Vance was at that core. I can recall spending time with him, not only talking about computer stuff. I was on the Apple's II side at that point. He was the leader of the MS-DOS users group, but also listening to him play his guitar, which he would bring to conferences. We had our community there, which was the originally called the Hospitality Center, then became the Electronic Village, and I look forward every year to seeing Vance there. Sometimes spotted him at other conferences as well, and then getting together with the community. In the 1990s, in the mid-1990s, he joined me with a company called Courseware Publishing International. We were doing CD-ROMs for language teaching. He worked with them as a regular employee. I was a contract writer and developer for them. We spent a lot of time together, had a lot of fun together, and I think produced at least one really cool piece of software. I should mention, by the way, historically, Vance came into this, as a software developer himself. I'll give you a link to his material in just a moment. It's really quite amazing how much breadth he has and how long he's been doing it. The main thing that I think many people know him for is his outreach and community building. First with a group called Webheads in Action, and then for about the last decade with a group called Learning Together. He's done, by his own count, 360 or more online sessions with this group that brings people from around the world who are interested in discussing. Sometimes he's the presenter, most of the time he's the host and brings in other speakers. And if you don't know anything about it, you should take a look. I've been on it a couple of times myself. It's fun. In addition, he's been heavily involved in editorial work. He's one of the leading reviewers for the Call Journal, but he's also edited columns for multiple journals. He has done a lot of work on his own. I counted, because he put numbers up on his website, 114 publications. The number 2 publication was his first Call publication back in 1981. That was before it was called Call. And interestingly, it references a publication of his from the previous year on computers, which he doesn't have up there, but maybe you should.
Well, I'll check that out.
So, let me encourage you to visit his website, vancestevens.com, and you go /papers, and you'll be intimidated at first, but there's a lot of really good stuff there, and it goes, it tells you more about the history of the field than any book will ever tell you, I think, just by going through that. It's simultaneously a museum and a contemporary art gallery. So it gives me great pleasure, if you can hand me that, please, to present the Call Lifetime Achievement Award to my good friend and colleague, Vance Stevens.
Well, can you hold it there in front of the screen? Just hold it steady there a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Can you read it?
It says, I can see Vance Stevens. This is lifetime achievement, I guess. Vance Stevens. I don't know if there's a glare, unfortunately, but that's quite all right. Don't worry about it. I'll read it when it arrives.
It's good to backlight it.
Yeah, that's okay. That's perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much. Really.
Turn them around.
I suppose I should say a few words. You'll be glad to know that Phil gave my speech just now, so I don't have to spend so much time.
Could you see the audience now, Vance?
Yes, I do. I think I saw Tom in the front row there. And I won't be able to identify everyone. The machine is bouncing around like crazy. Okay.
Joseph is just so excited.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all that. And Yusuf was, when he told me about it, he was concerned that I would act surprised and, you know, as if I were finding out about it for the first time right now. But obviously, we had to set this up. But when he told me about it, really, I was, and still am, deeply honored and flattered. And first of all, well, as Phil explained, I started. By the way, can you hear me okay? Because
yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of odd feedback here, but that's okay. I'm honored and flattered because I've been teaching since the mid-70s. As Phil explained, my first Call-related publication was in 1981. But that's why I'm honored. If you go to my website, you can see that I have been passionately associated with the field for a very long time. As Phil explained, I don't need to say more about that. But I'm flattered because there's so many more deserving people in this room, I'm sure. But anyway, it will be someone else's turn next year, and I just discovered, from what Phil said, that it'd be my obligation to come there and introduce the next person who's waiting there. But now is my moment, and I really thank you very much. But I also have to tell you that I'm pretty heartbroken that I couldn't be there. I was expecting to come at the last minute. Something came up, and I was prevented from traveling. But thanks to the wonders of Social Call, I'm able to be with you here on social media and accept this for today. And also, beyond that, I'm able to see your smiling faces on Facebook as you're associating with one another through the conference, and that makes me miss you all the more. But anyway, I'm especially honored to know that there's a strong mutual appreciation of the contributions that we all make. I mean, what Phil said about my website, if you go to his website, you'll also find a history of CAL, even publications that he's made on the history of CAL and that sort of thing. So there's quite a lot on our websites. And but anyway, I hope to be there next year to show my appreciation to you personally for this award and to introduce the next person. Phil did, not Phil, but Joseph is standing there looking very hungry. So, I want to tell you, enjoy what's left of the conference, enjoy your lunch, and we'll keep in touch through social call. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Let me switch back to what agenda. The second point on our agenda is the PhD Student Award, and that will be presented by Glenn Stockman.
Obviously, there's an enormous number of people who have been at this conference who have presented wonderful papers, and I've been fortunate enough to see quite a lot of them. But at the same time, we're able to see a lot of papers that are presented by the PhD students. Now, being a PhD student, as we've all experienced, or most of us have experienced, is a tough process in many different ways, filled with doubts, fears, financial concerns at times, emotional concerns, all sorts of concerns that probably people outside of academia wouldn't really understand. And in the midst of that, we've got people who have come here who are in the middle of their PhDs to present from all around the world. And I think that this forum, to be able to do this, will be probably something that will teach you more than you realize, many of which you'll probably understand later on. We looked at several presentations, as I said, and the presentations were wonderful. It was the responsibility of the editorial board to go to several of the PhD student presentations to make a decision on what we felt was the best PhD presentation. As we were doing this, it became extremely evident to us that that was a very, very tough decision. And it's tough because they're all good. And to choose one from that is kind of perhaps insulting to others in one way. But we don't mean it in this way. We mean that everybody has done a wonderful job. But we did feel that there was one particular person who had done a job that I think was really beyond what we could even expect from a PhD student. It was an excellent piece of work that was presented in a very professional manner. Some comments from the editorial board who attended the session were a clear, well-designed, well-executed presentation with innovative content, handling questions effectively, including challenging ones. I was in the presentation myself, and equally I was very impressed with this particular student's ability to think through issues on their feet in front of an experienced audience. So I'd like to announce the name of the student. If she would be able to come out to the front. Her name is Guo Hui. Congratulations.
Thank you, Glenn, and congratulations. Then, next point is I have asked two of my colleagues, Miriam and Nancy, to think about what they have seen and heard at this conference, and I have asked you in my first opening session to tell them what you think. So I'm very curious to find out what they have to tell us now?
Well, thank you for your support, Joseph, but we actually haven't heard anything back, but we have seen. And what we have seen is that pretty good? Yeah. So it's, of course, it was social call, but it was mainly a very big, I think, we think, a diversification of call. We have never seen such a range of very different presentations at a call conference. And if I just get you back to my initial slide at our keynote, where we talked about the development of Scopely, and don't worry, I'm not going another history of Paul now, but of course we have moved from the language lab to inside the classroom, to outside the classroom, to the world, and with that comes, of course, a very big social and political responsibility that we have as teachers, as Miriam has pointed out, and we have seen that reflected in many of your presentations as well. So we have different age groups, much more, not just the high school, university, but the very young, the age group. We have political, we have the minorities group, we have refugees, we have all kinds of disabilities. So we have a very wide range of applications that we haven't considered only a few years ago. Anna Frimona has a few years ago actually filled that fourth column of Bourgeois taxonomy, and she called it the atomized school, which I think encapsulates quite well what we're doing. And for that reason, we were so original to set up another Mentimeter for you, and we would like you to, yes, there we are, just get your phones here, fill in the code, and just in one or two words, not more than that, we're going to have another word cloud. So keep it short. What is your takeaway? What is your world called revisited after your impressions of this conference? And what are the key points that I really have shaped the thinking now of social call? So give you a few minutes for that.
Your main takeaway. Come on, keep it coming. Keep it coming.
You can go more than once as well. You can go 3 times.
If you have other ideas, add them. Maybe you can go another time and another time.
To get here.
They're difficult to get there. Very good. Collaboration, networking, connections, inclusion. Yeah.
Okay, one last one.
said he needed the final word to me, might be a little bit dangerous. Because obviously, with my take on social call, I'm glad to see that I am not on my own thinking in a more political way about the social. However, I'm also reassured to see that all the community, group, the connections, the networking aspect of social is also very strongly represented on this workout. So thank you very much for contributing. We feel reassured.
Okay, next point is the venue for our next conference. And it was not very clear for a long time, but I have received the following movie this morning, only this morning, so that I knew that we had finally gentlemen's agreement. So that was close.
Hi, my name is Simon Gonzalez, General Director of the Department of Foreign Languages and Cultures in the Universidad de Sabana, Colombia. I am very pleased to announce that we will host the 2020 Code Conference at our campus. You can be sure we will work hard to give you an enriching, enjoyable, and unforgettable conference. The venue is surrounded by the Andes Mountains and exciting places to visit nearby will be an incredible complement to this high-quality call event. Come and learn by yourselves the magical realism Gabriel Garcia Marquez always described in his books. You will be amazed by the Colombian culture and its friendly people. You are all invited to participate. See you in 2020.
The university is located right outside of Bogota, which is the capital of Colombia in South America, which is one of the regions that produces more than 70 to 90% of the emeralds in the world. Can you imagine that? Also, Bogota, just to give you an idea, is the third highest capital city in South America, just 2,600 meters. Once again, we're excited to host the 21st edition of the CALL Conference, and we're delighted that it's going to be here in Latin America. This is a humongous step towards internationalization of higher education. And as always, it's always great to see international scholars and colleagues get together across borders, and all in the name of what called computer-assisted language learning. Once again, where language is no barrier, but technology is the key that continues to open the doors to new, innovative teaching practices.
Hello everyone, my name is Adriana Lessa Marina, Associate Professor at the Department of Foreign Languages and Cultures at the Universidad de La Sabana. For the first time in Latin America, the CALL community will have the venue to collaborate and map out research across borders. It is our intention that by bringing the conference to our university, there are many bridges and projects nurtured, so we can all work together to strengthen the field in all of its dimensions. We expect that all of us who work either from a researcher or practitioner perspective, can reflect, examine, discuss, and analyze the challenges that CALL poses in this contemporary educational era. We look forward to seeing you next year, and welcome once again to our beautiful country.
The next venue will be Bogota, and more importantly, it will be the first or one of the first activities of the recently founded association, Latin CALL. Anna Kilema and I, and other colleagues, have contributed to that organization, and we are proud that we can put our next conference under that, umbrella. Thank you. Okay, so we are excited about South America, so I wanted to do the tour of the world for the remaining years before I retire. There will be another continent every year. I hope you will be able to join us to that fantastic country. We hope to support people like we do here in Hong Kong, in Taiwan. We like to support people in Colombia as well, in their struggle for freedom, justice, and democracy. Thank you. The theme of next year's conference will be probably thinking about smart call, and then you could say, yes, but isn't that another persuasive term? Well, I will define in the text, you will find it in the the invitation you will see in that first announcement in September, you will receive the first text. I define smart. You could say intelligent. I like in this context more smart as the sum of the following qualities. It's personalization, contextualization, and socialization. The personalization is the extent to which a learning environment can adapt itself through user, teacher, or system intervention to learner goals, preferences. That's what we call intelligent tutoring so far, but I prefer the term adaptive learning, rather personalization. And it's mainly a question of data. Not that intelligence is not really a problem. The problem is data. And as you know, you have the principles. I make a distinction between learner analytics and learning analytics, where it's about analysis of individual data for remediation, learning paths, and reporting. That's what I call learning analytics. It's about the individual learner, how to adapt to that individual learner. And then secondly, learning analytics is for how to adapt the entire learning environments to all of your students, how they behave, how they learn, and etc. Contextualization is an underestimated performance for CALM. I will look for more concrete examples because the geotemporal location that means in space and time of the learner, a system can look up content, attractive or not, from open data sources, which are relevant for the learner regarding his or her learning goal, interest, and preferences. The example I always give is when I'm here in the neighborhood of Hong Kong, in the fisherman's village of, showed me the fisherman's village of Tuen Mun. But when I was walking there, I was thinking, technologically speaking, my smartphone can give me information in advance about how to buy my fish, how to take that fish to the restaurant, how to order, how to explain to the chef how to cook my fish, if I want beer or not, and how to pay for all that. The thing could have explained, unfortunately, I had the shame to explain all that to me, but afterwards I thought, technologically speaking, there's no problem at all, like Google Glasses, that will explain to the next person who's now there and we go there. So contextualization is an underestimated and underexploited possibility functionality for CALM. And I don't have to explain the third quality I think is the third aspect of smart learning environments, and is the socialization from, but as Phil already said, also from the learner's point of view, from the teacher's point of view, and from the